not to pick on you right away, but did you take the T to get here, or did you drive, or how'd you get here?
Absolutely took the green line.
You
Got off
did?
the Copley, yes.
Oh, wow. From where?
From Arlington, I hit this one stop.
One stop, and how'd that go for you?
Smooth.
You left last night, though, right? Is that the... No, I
Well,
don't think he likes those kind of jokes.
One stop is not that far, Jim.
That's pretty good.
Okay. So tell us, $24 billion is the money that has been talked about. Well, no, before we do that, we should just give a nice... You've been here for 8 months, I think?
Yes.
It's every day there's another story about something going wrong at the T. How's it been going?
Well, you know, I always tell the staff and I tell folks, the reason that there's so much written about us and talked about us is because the T serves the public in a manner that is so vital to everybody. It's about quality of life. It's about serving people and communities and connecting. So certainly having whether it's positive stories or stories about where we can improve, that's normal. And
Yep.
I'm comfortable with that because people do need to hear when we have challenges, but people also need to hear that we are making progress, and we really are. We have started to turn the corner, and I'm sure we'll get into that in the hour.
So is the media worse in Boston than it is in, you get the Daily News, you get the New York Post, you get the New York Times, you get all these rough and tumble media outlets in New York City. Who's worse?
I would say they're all doing their jobs, and it's perfect.
You know, I have to say, Phil, we're going to get to the calls in a second at 877-301-8097. I want to be you when I grow up, and I mean it. When things go wrong, you appear to stay, at least from my limited experience with, incredibly calm. Just yesterday, the Globe's reporting, one day at least reporting, a tool breaks, there's shrapnel in the leg of a T worker. The third rail, I think on an Orange Line train, is turned on before people who are doing work leave, obviously raising electrocution issues. How do you deal as a human, as a leader, with this endless litany while you are making progress? And we're going to get to that. How do you deal with the litany of nightmares, headaches, almost daily?
Well, you know, the job that we're in is a very complex and inherently challenging environment, right? You do have power, you do have moving trains, and we're 24/7. So what we try to do is be balanced. We really need to be, because every day there is something else that we need to tackle. And at the same time, we are trying to ensure that we're delivering that reliable service for our public, right? So it really is trying to stay level-headed and look to how do we solve those problems? How do we improve the environment for our employees? And, you know, so the incident you mentioned was to replace those tools. We pulled those tools out, and we were able to procure the rubber covers that would make it safer for our workforce. That's very important to us, because as we're asking the workforce to continue to deliver, and to deliver in ways that over the next year is going to be a tremendous amount of work, we need them to know that we are focused on their well-being.
But if I may make at least a distinction as an outsider, you're going to talk, I know, in a few minutes about your public commitment to deal with all the slow zones by December of 2024, which, if it happens, is terrific. But it seems to me the kind of things I just mentioned, that reported in the Globe, are sort of a cultural kind of thing. And you're not, I hope you're nodding in agreement. And if you are, and if that's true, how do you fix that part of the problem?
Well, from the very beginning, safety will always be paramount, even before I got here. The whole thing with the FTA and the safety management report was about how the T needs to improve safety. Part of that is ensuring that our employees have the right tools and equipment, right direction, right training, and that gets to changing the culture. What we've been doing over the recent last few months, and even earlier on, but more formally, is going out and meeting and greeting with all of our frontline employees. When the work was ongoing, I have senior leadership out there watching and observing, because everywhere we could see that we need to improve, we are doing that, right? And there are things that we are seeing where, as we demonstrate that commitment, people are being more upfront too, and they're raising those concerns. I think in the past, there's been this feeling that if I raise it and it doesn't get addressed, then I'm going to stop bringing it up. We are turning the corner. The employees are speaking up, and they're actually embracing the changes that are happening. And you could see it when you go out and watch the track workers. And, you know, just we're probably talking about the hiring, but a lot of the new track workers that are out there, you should see just how much they've learned in the very beginning of their engagement out there. Tightening bolts, laying rail, changing ties. It's fantastic to see.
That's the voice of Phillip Ang, GM of the T. He's with us for this hour. You can talk to him directly. Lines are full, but when one opens up at 877-301-8970.
We'll get to the calls in just a second, but I just, Taylor Dolvin and some of her colleagues, including Laura Camardi at the Globe, have done some great reporting on the T. And one of their recent stories just from a few weeks ago talked about how for 15 years people have been talking about, experts have been talking about the T not investing enough in maintaining and updating its infrastructure. There's a lot of talk about how much governor's offices really didn't want, including Deval Patrick, and we'll see about Maura Healey, but Charlie Baker weren't keen on talking about how bad things were at the T. And just from this one story, 64% of T assets need replacing. 89% of track, assuming the Globe is correct, and correct me if I'm wrong, is not in good repair. Half of the subway trains and buses not in good repair. The commuter rail needing electrification. It goes on and on and on about these things that have been there for years and years and years. So when you talk about this $24 billion number to repair and update the system as a planning tool, it seemed to me that with this state of disrepair, even though the governor says we don't need $24 billion right now, maybe we do. I mean, it's in bad shape.
Well, as much as everyone would love to see $24.5 billion now, we wouldn't be able to spend that now.
Okay.
Right? So that's part of it, right? It is a planning tool, and for the first time, or at least the first time in, I think, since the last capital needs assessment, I'm proud of what the team did because they actually have gone through a very thorough asset management program to identify all of our assets and the current conditions of our assets. And that's how that was based on to develop those different costs for the different components. And you mentioned the amount of track that is not in a state of good repair. I think that's consistent, unfortunately, with the performance of our system, right? So those numbers, when you start to look at them, actually demonstrate that it is based on existing conditions where we need to go. Now, having said that, this enables us now to have that dialogue with regards to how do we fund the T? How do we keep the ability to keep the T moving? And really what it is going to be an opportunity to talk about what are the long-term needs and hopefully some steady revenue where we can be able to plan. So depending upon how much is made available, that's how we will plan our strategy. It doesn't mean we can't keep the system safe. It doesn't mean we can't keep it running because that's what we're doing over the next year and a half. We are improving safety. We're going to improve the reliability, and we will get it back to where people want to ride the T more.
So we'll return to the whole $24 billion thing and where it's coming from, but there are a ton of calls, so let's start with them. Ray in Watertown, you're on with Phillip Ang, the GM of the T. Welcome, Ray.
Hi, thank you for taking my call, and nice to meet you, Mr. Ang. I think you would agree that having a dedicated and well-trained workforce is important to the T's success. And I just wanted to alert you to my husband's experience. He joined the MBTA as a bus driver in July. And as I've watched him go through this, I see examples of things that really could be improved to maintain a good workforce. And I'd like to just give you two examples. One is, since he joined the T in July, he gets his schedule for the following day only the day before. So I don't know how that would work for someone who has, for example, child care or other care responsibilities. This has been going on since July, and it won't be until the end of December that he'll actually get his schedule a couple months in advance.
What's
That's
the
my
second thing,
first
Ray,
example.
if you would? Yes, please.
Second thing is, during the first 6 weeks of training, he had to go to a classroom-based training situation. He was told at the time, do not take the T to get here because it's too unreliable and you won't get here on time. I'm serious.
Oh,
At
gosh.
that time, we were sharing one car. He was warned that if he brought a cell phone with him and it was found on his property in his backpack, he would be fired instantly. There were no accommodations made for people to place a cell phone, for example, into a lockbox. They were told to lock it in your car.
Hey, Ray, before
This is ludicrous.
before Phil Lang responds, how's your husband like the job other than this? That's a serious question.
You know, he likes the job.
Great.
He's actually met you, Mr. Ang. You
Great.
stepped onto his bus one day when he was helping someone.
Great. Hey, Ray, let's have Phillip Ang answer your two concerns. Thanks for the call. Take it away.
Well, Ray, thank you first and foremost for calling in. And I want to thank your husband for being part of the T team. It's fantastic. And that is all part of the hiring effort. With regards to the schedules and how we can improve the experience for our workforce, I've met and talked with a lot of the frontline bus operators, and that's just one of the things that has been brought to our attention. So our leadership team is looking at that. I do have a new Chief Operating Officer, Ryan Caholen, who is taken over, and he is working with our bus schedulers and all. Part of the hiring also allow us to improve our schedules and eliminate some of the other concerns that they have, such as the split shifts and the long breaks in between. So we are focused on improving the environment for our operators. With regards to being told not to take the T, I don't know about how I'd answer that one. I still take the T everywhere, and I'm making it on time. And I think that as we continue to improve our system, we will even do that more. And last and foremost, I understand how challenging an environment being a bus operator is. It's not easy to navigate the streets in a car. Imagine navigating it in a bus and having all the people that you carry and rely on you. But I am truly honored to know that those folks are doing what they do day in and day out. Holidays, nights, weekends. It's a tough environment.
Hold on,
mentioned the hiring.
we should remind people that before you came, the T was having difficulty hiring bus drivers, and one of the reasons was that they required people to work part-time. I forget if it was 3 months or something like that. So of course they couldn't afford to take the job, and this kind of went on, and no one really questioned it until it was in the paper. That was shortly before you. That's changed now, right?
Absolutely, that's changed.
Yeah.
We had worked out an agreement, a new contract with the Carmen's Union 589. We are very pleased with that because, first and foremost, we knew that attracting bus operators, and I talked about the tough environment for them, we were not compensated appropriately. The contract allowed us to pay them over $30 an hour. We are now competitive with the private sector bus operators.
Okay.
So what was happening is people would come in, get trained, get certified, and then they would go for other opportunities.
How is the hiring going? You've mentioned it a few times. You seem to be
Hiring-
happy with it?
Absolutely. Even before I took this role, Governor Healy and her administration were very focused on our workforce. They knew that you cannot rebuild the T if you don't have a strong workforce. The supplemental budget from the governor, $20 million, gave us the ability to actually enter into these negotiations with confidence that we could afford it. The hiring right to date is over 1,300 new hires to the T. That's the best hiring we've ever had in our history. And the bus operators, after that contract, the applications just exploded. We are becoming the entity of choice to work for again.
How many people left while the 1,300 were being hired? What was the net increase in employment?
Well, what we are seeing right now, we anticipate being around net by the end of the year, close to 700 new employees.
That's good. I'm sorry. Finish.
No, I was going to say the contract also included incentives for longevity and incentives for folks who chose not to retire. So those things we actually saw slow down the attrition.
Let's go to Derek in Weymouth. You're on with Phillip. Welcome, Derek.
Hi, I hope you can hear me okay, and
Yep.
I'm very excited to have you on the job. I am very encouraged from what I hear so far. What I want to say was my wife has recently started taking the commuter rail from Weymouth into Boston, try and get off the road and not spend an hour in traffic. I think we can all agree that having more people on public transit is great. So she's done the math, and it's about $7 for the train ticket. It works out to about the amount of gas that she's spending. She's much happier on the train. But what we find is there's a parking lot there that is costing maybe $6.50 in addition to the $7 ticket. That parking lot I just drove by a little while ago, practically empty. Why are we charging and doubling the cost of commuting, leaving an empty parking lot when we can have that, say, free, and encourage people to take the train and not double their cost?
Derek, thanks for the question. We appreciate it.
Well, Derek, thank you for that, and thank you for your wife for taking the commuter rail. The ridership actually has been more robust and returning on this commuter rail system, and that's partly because of the on-time performance of the rail. It's over close to 94%, which is really an industry standard. With regards to parking fees and fares, those are all things that we have to look at. I'm not familiar exactly with that parking lot and the fare structure there. And I understand how everyone during these challenging times are trying to balance expenditures. I am happy, though, that his wife is enjoying the commuter trip. I myself enjoy riding on the system, and commuter rail is one of the best ways to go.
How's the thank you, Derek, for the call. How is ridership overall in terms of its comparison today to pre-pandemic on the T?
Well, the commuter rail side is actually, if you take a look at some FTA and FRA information, our commuter rail is probably the most robust in terms of return of ridership. Probably close to 90% of our riders have come back, whereas some of our sister agencies probably around 70%. The subway side is, I think, in that range of 70% as well, but also know that one of the things that we're very focused on is improving that system so people can come back and know that they have that as a viable option. And I think as we continue to deliver on all of the work that we're doing and demonstrate that we can provide the level of service they need, they will start to see that that is a very attractive way to travel.
We have a text from Mary from Weymouth. She's a Greenbush commuter, and she says she wants to know about changing commuter rail services, current one train an hour. So her choice is to be early for work on a seriously overcrowded train, or being late for work on a less crowded train.
Frequency of commuter rail, frequency and reliability is something that I know makes a difference on people choosing mass transportation. I know the commuter rail side has worked very hard on certain corridors to improve the frequency, and we are going to continue to work on that. Some of it is related to how much rolling stock do we have, I mean, how many cars do we have, right? Also, do you have the ability to run more trains, and sometimes, not to get too much into the weeds, do we have the yards to be able to stage those trains in the morning to be able to run them more frequently? But we are looking at how we can improve commuter rail service, and that is something that, working with Mike Muller, who is my executive director of railroad ops, we are focused on improving railroad service. Frequency, I know it, if it's not there, it makes it a tough choice.
Let's go to Adam in Boston. You're on with Phillip Eng. Welcome, Adam.
Yes, good morning, Jim and Roger. Thank you for having me on, and thank you, GM Eng, for all of the work you're doing. We really want the T to succeed, and thank you for all your work. Hope it gets better and keeps getting better. My question is about subway frequencies. I know you just touched on that with commuter rail. When will we see the frequency of subway service return to the pre-June 20th, 2022 levels when it was cut? And we were told that once we hired the amount of dispatchers that service would be restored. I think that service every 15 minutes on some of the subway lines is really not conducive to making people want to ride it. Thank you so much for addressing this. I really appreciate all your work.
Thanks for the question, Adam.
Thank you, Adam. So the dispatchers are certainly a key part. They operate in our operation control center. They are responsible for train movement, but that's not the only piece of improving the frequency on our subway lines. Part of it is also tied to the fact that we do have all these different track conditions and speed restrictions throughout the system. That does slow down the trains, and that does inhibit the ability to run them more frequently. That's something, obviously, as we continue to lift those speed restrictions and get trains back, you will see frequency improve. And a good example of that was when we tackled the Blue Line this past summer, right? We finished the work in advance of the Sumner Tunnel closure, and we were able to get that frequency down to under 6 minutes on a regular basis. So that's what will happen as you see the work that we're doing on green and red and orange. Those frequencies will become more, shorter.
Adam, thank you. You know, one of the things that candidate Wu talked about a lot, including on our show and everywhere else, was freeing the T. Obviously, there's a free bus pilot, I think, on 3 bus routes. I think it ends in March. What would you be recommending post-March, and have you been discussing this with the mayor?
Well, first and foremost, thank you to the city and the mayor for the funding to be able to provide those free buses. It is a good way to examine ridership, and it's something that I know that the mayor's very invested in terms of being able to provide that. As far as free fares across the system, or if that's the question.
Well, the question is, how about those 3 routes? Forget expansion. How about continuing free bus service on those routes post-March? Is that something you're contemplating? What are you going to say to her?
We're open to that. We're talking with the city with regards to that. So
Is your expectation that it will continue post-March?
I believe that's the intention. Yes.
Great.
You know, Phillip Eng, and we're talking with Phillip Eng, who's the general manager of the MBTA. 877-301-8970 is the number to call it, text at. A couple of weeks ago, maybe it was less than that even, we had Ian Cross on, who's just done a great podcast associated with GBH on the Big Dig. If you haven't listened to it, it's really terrific. to listeners. As he ended it with his scene at 4:30 in the morning over in Medford by Tufts when the new Green Line expansion was opening up, and it was a great moment. People are cheering, and it's still dark outside, and they're so excited that the T is going to be over there. And Ian Cross is talking about one of the big problems today is people don't trust government to be able to do big things like expand the T or do something like the Big Dig. And he talked about winning hearts and minds. And it was a very emotional scene. Then, of course, unfortunately for Ian Cross, shortly after we finished the podcast, is when we discovered that these T tracks were too narrow in that section of the newly rebuilt Green Line. So I just wanted to ask you, I know that they knew that people knew about this at the T in April of 2021 and forged ahead nonetheless. And now massive parts of these tracks are going to have to be fixed. So number one, how does something like this happen? And number two, who's going to pay for this and be held responsible?
So, public works is something that, if you look around, we have tremendous amount of public works, and we should be proud of those public works. Every project does have issues that arise, and I think I talked about this, unfortunately, as you mentioned, in April of 2021, when those indications that we had rails that were too close together, and that was due to a prefabrication of the ties, that should have been when this was paused. Let's take a look.
Right.
Do we have a bigger issue? Unfortunately, it was allowed to continue to progress, and we have significant amount of areas where it has to be put to the right dimension.
It's almost the whole line. Is it not almost the whole 4.5 miles or
It
something?
is significant portions. I
Okay.
believe it's about 80% of the
Okay.
Medford Tufts branch and about 50% of Union.
Okay.
And we are holding them accountable. We have told the design build team that this is their responsibility. That should have been done properly in the first place.
Well, we caught you. Now you have to give the money back you stole from the bank. Is there any talk about holding people accountable who essentially deceived the public and, according to Charlie Baker's representative, deceived their boss, the governor of the Commonwealth?
Well, I wasn't here
I
when
know,
that occurred.
I know, of course.
And I don't know what went through, the minds during that period. I do know that.
But you do know they didn't tell the public.
I do know that that was not publicly disclosed. I do know that if you go back in time, again, they had an opportunity back in April of 2021 to actually figure out if this was a larger scale issue. Unfortunately, that was not done. There were several people that were still part of that team here when I found out about it, and I did hold them accountable. They are no longer
gone,
working
yeah.
for us at the T.
Does this not, as a man who has a reputation like yours over decades in the industry, does this not offend you? No, I'm serious. As a person, that this kind of lack of transparency and I don't know, I would feel, if I had known that the gauge was too narrow, I would have been nervous whether or not you as an expert knows. Does it not offend you in some ways that they did this and at least the head guy is, no accountability has been exacted?
Well, I am very focused myself of how we address this problem right now. The goal of mine is to make sure we tackle this once and for all. With regards to those decisions made and things that I would not have done myself, I think what really hurts is that, and I think Margie talked about it, public works and the ability to deliver, and you lose public trust when you don't do these things. And it's very hard for me to say we need more funds if we're not spending the dollars appropriately. So I'm very focused right now on our leadership team, our workforce. able to do more speed restriction than originally planned. And that is following successes on Ashmont Mattapan, where we are running at full line speed. So those are the types of things where now you're getting more production, it's more efficient, and you're actually accomplishing the work that you set out to do. And I think that's where we want to demonstrate. I want to look forward with regards to how the T and our current workforce deliver. Those things in the past, that's going to be very thoroughly reviewed, and we'll have to tackle
Okay,
that when we get through the
just one
detail.
more related question. I promise I'll drop it. So someone comes to you, I don't know how you found out, and you find out that they covered up this thing since April of 2021, now disclosed. What was your immediate reaction?
Well, you said earlier that I kind of stay level-headed.
As far as I know, I don't know you in private. Go ahead.
I think I was a little surprised that we would not have tackled this, or I should say very surprised, but what I really was, how do we fix it now? Because really it's about making sure the public knows it's safe, they can take the system, but we have a plan moving forward.
You know what I wonder, Phillip? I mean, you were in New York before you came here, worked there for many, many years, and they have a pretty old system too, but it, from at least my experience in New York, my children's there, it runs and it goes pretty fast. So what's the difference? Is there a different political climate, or I know that Second Avenue extension cost a fortune, but it's beautiful. Are they in as bad a shape as we are? And if they're not, why not?
Well, I know, and I don't want to comment on everyone's system, but I know many of the systems across the country are facing similar challenges. There are concerns with the amount of investment that is needed. We're not the only agency that does need additional dollars. In fact, when I was at New York City Transit, the system did need an investment. They needed, we called it the $836 million subway action plan, but that was to tackle infrastructure that were failing. And when I was at Long Island Railroad, similar thing. Long Island Railroad Forward Plan was to address those conditions, switches, track conditions, drainage concerns, power, things that were bringing back the system to reliable. And what happens is that we need to make sure that we invest in our system, state of good repair, that we invest in our workforce. Those are all the things that we're doing right now, and that's why we will be giving back the public the system they deserve, and then continuing to build towards the future, because that's not only to get back to where we were once before, but how do we envision the future to be able to serve future generations?
We're talking to the general manager of the MBTA, Phillip Eng. He's going to be with us until noon. You can reach him at 877-301-8970. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, we remember King Lear, the king of sitcoms, the renegade who revolutionized television. Norman Lear made an indelible mark in Boston by way of Emerson College and beyond. And who knew that it would take a 72-year-old man to save the Bachelor franchise? We look at why, in our ageist society, The Golden Bachelor is TV gold. We'll take on that and more on The Culture Show's Week in Review, today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for GBH comes from you and ABCD, an anti-poverty organization providing fresh and nutritious groceries to elders and families through food programs, committed to helping people get from where they are to where they want to be. BostonABCD.org/empower. And the Worcester Art Museum, presenting a major exhibition of etchings by Rembrandt, the powerful storytelling of artist Faith Ringgold, and more. Museum hours and information at worcesterart.org. And Cleary Insurance, working with insurance carriers such as Arbella Insurance. Cleary Insurance is committed to helping clients understand that life is worth the risk, with 3 offices in Greater Boston and online at clearyinsurance.com. And Vermont Law and Graduate School, offering JD and master's degree programs in environmental law and policy and restorative justice, online and residential programs available. vermontlaw.edu.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browding, Marge Regan, live at the library. Streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. There was a problem with YouTube. It's been fixed. Facebook.com/GBH News. If you're just joining us, we are joined by MBTA General Manager Phillip Eng. He's here for Ask the GM. During the break, you said to us, Phil, please, please have me back here regularly to answer questions. Is that what you said? I can't remember.
Absolutely. Just one stop on the green line.
Exactly.
That's
I
right,
can come
one
anytime you want.
stop on the green
If you
line.
want to talk to or text Mr. Eng, you can do it at 877-301-8970.
We have Tammy available here at the Boston Public Library microphone who would like to talk to Phillip Eng. Go ahead, Tammy.
Hey,
Thank
Tammy.
you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for taking my question. I want to say the first thing I did for my birthday was get my senior Charlie card. I love my senior Charlie card. I love the bus drivers. They do such a good job. They have such a hard job. The bike lanes have made it almost impossible for them. I just came on Berkeley Street. They put another bike lane in. One lane for everybody. It's crazy everywhere. I just want to tell you that I appreciate the bus drivers. I hope they can get a raise someday. And that's the, I mean, what do you think about the bus lanes? They just make everything awful.
Bike lanes, you mean?
Yeah,
What do you
the
think
bike
of the bike
lanes.
lanes? Yeah.
The bike lanes have made it so hard. Up Mass Ave towards South Bay Mall, one lane now. South Huntington, Huntington Ave, one lane now. The bus drivers have such a hard job, and I really want to tell you that I appreciate them so much, and I've never had a bad bus ride. So
There
thank
you go.
Thank you, Tammy. That was
Tammy,
great.
Thank you very much, Tammy.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I agree that the bus operators do have a very challenging job, and thank you for being a rider as well. You know, the importance about mass transportation, it's just one option that people have in terms of how do you get from one place to another place. And I really do believe in, having given my past roles, that it is a multimodal system. We have to find a way to have a balance between whether it's taking the T, whether you want to walk, whether you want to ride a bike, or whether you want to drive a car, and other modes. The importance is, how do we design these elements so they can all work together? And I think the challenge is, you know, you have a limited corridor where you already have streets that were designed for vehicular traffic originally, and now you're introducing new modes. And it is a balance. And every time we look to work to those, whether it's bus lanes, bike lanes, the engineers and the designers will really work hard to make sure it's safe. I do understand the importance of giving our bus operators the ability to do their jobs properly and safely.
You know, we have a lot of people texting about fares, saying people don't, the T workers don't collect the fares. Here's one from Melissa in Charlestown, says, are you aware, Mr. Eng, that people with Charlie cars on the ride can ride the ferries for free because employees don't have scanners? She appreciates the free ride, but seriously. And then we have somebody talking about collectors not collecting tickets from South Station on the Worcester line. I guess it's a 50% effort. This person rides 4 days a week. They're wondering why the conductors rather don't collect more often. Then you have the one I've heard forever about people getting on the second train on the Green Line coming down Beacon Street, that they get in and they don't pay their fares. I think that's because the trains are so crowded. But anyway, what's going on with fares? Is this system-wide or what?
Well, fares are obviously an important part of our funding source. They do represent about a third of our operating revenue, and that's important to us. The ability to collect fares, and I've heard some of those concerns as well, are important to us. We are working with our partners at the Commuter Rail and Keolis with regards to those comments that have been brought up to our attention, and they are also working on how to address that. With regards to crowded Green Line trains and things of that nature, on one hand, I'm happy when they're crowded because that means people are using our system. We are working on a new fare collection system that I'm excited about that will enable people to better, easier pay their fares, contactless payment, something that's currently being tested right now and very optimistic of.
Because sometimes there's only one driver on a two-train Green Line, so there's no one on the second train anyway, right?
Well, that's what some of the challenges, not just here at the T, in terms of how do you load people onto the trains faster. And
Yeah.
if you only open one door, it takes much longer for people to be able to enter the train and exit the train. All-door boarding is something that is a big focus at a lot of places. At the same time, that does open it up to whether it's fare evasion or just not paying the fare. It does open up to those concerns on how we do that. Obviously, we will have readers at every door and make announcements to require that people pay their fares.
Phil Eng, I'm sure you're listening to our show every day, and you're aware of the fact that Marjorie Egan has admitted on the air, this is an anonymous texter asking this, that she drives in the bus lanes.
Okay.
Because there
I have.
often there's no bus. How do you feel about that?
Well,
Be honest.
I know that the bus lanes are set aside so we can able to move more people more efficiently, reduce our carbon footprint. With regards to enforcement on the bus lanes, that's something that we do need to take a look at. How do we better do that? Because whether it's people using it, and I'm not going to say Marjorie's using
No,
it, but
she
when
does.
others
She
are
admits
using
she
it, or
does it.
people are
Good.
parking,
Yeah.
we need to find a way to allow the bus operators to have that path to be able to get people where they should be and on time.
Philip,
He
Jim,
just proved
Jim wants
he's a
me
far
to be.
nicer guy
He
than
wants
I
me
am.
to be arrested. Is basically
Okay,
what
let's
he's
go to
talking about.
Maryland.
That's what he's talking about.
Marilyn, I didn't say that. I was just asking the head of the T. Marilyn and Brookline, you're next on Boston Public Radio with Phillip Eng. Welcome.
Hi, thanks. So,
Sure.
I'm really glad that you're here, Mr. Ang. Excuse me. In the old days when they were working on the T and they replaced the trains with buses, they would go the whole route. And these days, sometimes they don't. I got really stuck the other day when I was trying to get to Cambridge, and I took the Green Line, and I got on the trolley at the bus at Babcock, and it went to Copley Place, and the subway stop was locked, and they wanted me to walk to the Orange Line, take the Orange Line to Downtown Crossing, walk to the Red Line from there, and then get it. And I would have missed my play doing that. So why don't you cover the whole route anymore?
Thanks, Marilyn.
Well, some of the operation planning with regards to these different diversions is taking a look at how we can continue to provide that alternative service when we're doing the work. I do understand what she talked about, because the intention along the central part of the tunnel where we had the tunnel work going on was to allow the Orange Line to be the alternative service. The other challenge is the more buses we use, and I understand how that adds to one convenience, there is a lot of traffic congestion as well, so the buses, they're not necessarily, to be able to accommodate that many buses through the heart of Boston is also another challenge. So that's why we were recommending the Orange Line, but I'll certainly take that comment back and share that information with our team as we look towards the future diversions.
What's the issue that's causing you the most frustration in your first 8 months? The one you see is, I don't want to say intractable, but the most difficult to address?
I don't know if I think it's the fact that they're all tied together, right? We needed to grow the workforce, and we're doing that in order to be able to deliver the work. We need to be able to get in and do the work, which means we do have to impact the way people travel, just as Marilyn said, because what we were doing in the old way, we were not making enough headway. So that is one of the things. How do you balance all these competing needs and deliver at the end what you've committed to?
You know, we were talking about your calmness a couple times. The one thing I wouldn't be calm about is the funding. You've referenced, as you just did, the $24 billion for repair and replace, but not expand as a planning tool. I'm so glad you said, you used the expression envisioning the future. So $24 billion to repair and replace, plus whatever the future is according to you, whether it's, well, there are a whole variety of projects that people have been talking about. Do you have any confidence that the legislature, which has been at least historically averse to, in my opinion, doing adequate funding for the T, is going to come up with this? And I assume fare hikes, while you said not right now, around the $24 billion, fare hikes have got to be part of the mix, don't they?
Well, all of these things have to be discussed, right? Somehow we have to balance our budget. The legislature, we're constantly speaking with them with regards, and now that we have a figure that allows them to better understand our deficit in terms of how do we get to a state of good repair. Again, what I've talked with when I speak to the legislature is how do we come up with some consistent revenue stream that allows us to be able to plan. And that's where my responsibility comes in, because whatever that is allocated, and obviously the more the better, is going to allow us to be able to set in place proper preventive maintenance, corrective maintenance, but also then allows us to take a look at how do we deliver on those projects that modernize, that expand the system. And that's going to be something that I actually look forward to, because delivering a capital program is something that, as you talked about, Marjorie, part of the litmus test for an agency in terms of not just only keeping the system functioning today, it is building for the future.
Are we ever going to get those overdue, like red line cars and those things that are like
Yes.
infinitely behind?
I am confident that we will see more red line cars We've been working very closely with CRSC. And for those who don't know, obviously rolling stock is a key part of providing that safe, reliable trip. The old Orange Line cars, the old Red Line cars, they were failing at a very high rate. The cars that we're receiving now from CRRC is performing greater than the contractual requirements. What we're working on now is getting the production up to where it should be. And I'm confident that we will start to see more and more cars.
Just one more thing on the money. We have Jim Aloisi and Stacy Thompson in all the time. They're like our transportation
They'll be here Monday.
gurus. And Jim Aloisi writes a lot in Commonwealth magazine. And he talks about how, I think I referenced this before, that the T's problems with funding go way back to 1991 with Paul Cellucci and Bill Weld that were governor and lieutenant governor back then. And they talk about legislators talking about this forward funding approach to the T that was a terrible idea. And he blames the persistent, stubborn refusal of the legislature to properly fund the T, et cetera, et cetera. And as Jim just said, I mean, you talked about talking to the legislature, but it does seem that the legislature has been loath to really give the T the kind of money it needs. And you always have these complaints, I've asked you this before, from legislators from like Sturbridge and far away from Boston saying, why should I be funding the MBTA? My constituents don't live there, et cetera. It's a tough sell, isn't it?
Well, I understand that concern, right? Everyone has a local constituency that they have to serve. At the same time, I serve the whole Commonwealth. My goal is to be able to demonstrate not only is it important to fund us, it's vital to fund us. We support the economy, we support businesses, we support quality of life. And without the T, I suspect the rest of the infrastructure would be overloaded. But I also believe that the best way to say fund us is to demonstrate that we can use that money wisely, efficiently, and deliver on the results that we're promising.
Let's go to Anita in Medford. You're on with Phillip. Hello, Anita.
Hello. I am calling about the bus network redesign. The effort to provide service to new communities is quite commendable, but there are a few issues. Providing service every 15 minutes all day to some areas means that service will be cut for many others. In my area, one well-used bus will be rerouted and it will have service reduced, including to every hour and a half after 7 p.m. The redesign eliminates and reroutes many buses. The director of bus transformation stated that replacing an eliminated or rerouted bus with another one up to half a mile away was considered adequate. This will place an untenable burden on the elderly and disabled, not to mention those with children carrying groceries or traveling in bad weather. And during development
Hey,
of the
Anita,
plan,
my apology. There's so many people who want to speak to Mr. Eng. Can you cut to the chase and pose a question?
Outreach during the development was inadequate, and I would like to ask if the general manager would commit to reviewing the entire project, including holding public meetings in every affected city and town, and having a full and fair comment period on the revised draft before anything is implemented.
Thank you, Anita. We appreciate your call.
Well, I've committed to having communication and transparency. Let me take that feedback and let me go back to the staff about with regards to the level that we've done before. But moving forward is always about improving communication. And then we'll always have the opportunity to have feedback, whether it's actual another public meeting or this feedback that we just got today. I understand how changing a bus route affects positively for some, negatively for others. Those are parts of the challenge that we have to make tough decisions, but I certainly understand how half mile might be okay for someone else, but it might not be okay for, like today, I took one stop, even though I could have walked.
Anita, thank you. Jordan from East Boston texted you, Phillip Eng. I wanted to talk to you today at the library, but I live in East Boston and know it will take forever to get there on the Green Line. Can you provide any realistic updates on the Blue and Red Line connector?
Well, we are advancing the study for that. That is something that I know has been long talked about. I think if I get out ahead of those results of that study, it'd be hard to actually be accurate with what I say. But I do know that that is something that if we have connectivity between our systems, it does give people more flexibility on their routes. But I don't have that crystal ball yet to be able to share that.
You know, back to funding in the legislature, at what point does the T's operating budget go into shortfall? Is it calendar year 2024? And whenever it is, what's being done to prepare for that, Phil?
Well, that is something that we are still working through internally right now. We are meeting with A&F with regards to those.
Administration and Finance.
Administration and Finance, sorry about that,
That's
yes.
okay, sure.
Those are the things that when we have an opportunity to finally have some more information to share publicly, we will. But that is something that I know how important it is to balance our budget, and we're working very hard on that.
Let's go to Ed in the car. He's calling about escalators, and I want you to know, Ed, that we're getting lots of texts about escalators as well. So you're on with Phillip Eng. Go ahead.
Hi, Ed.
Thanks, folks. Yeah, just want to say I understand the challenge of the T is massive. But the escalator at Porter Square goes to the center of the earth. It's so far down, and it's down more than it's up. And I can't understand. I can understand trying to fix the T is brutal, but why is it so difficult to keep the ancillary equipment, such as an escalator, up and running? You know, it's like a 2 weeks worth of stair stepping just to go to the T every day, and it doesn't seem as if that should be as challenging as some of the other massive challenges on the T itself.
Ed, thanks so much. We appreciate it.
Well, escalators and stations are something near and dear to me. I do view them as like a gateway to our system, and I do view them as a very important part of a community. That's why I made an appointment that happened in August. Dennis Farley, who's my chief of stations. Actually, Dennis and I talk a lot about escalators and elevators and their availability to the public. That's something that he's working on. In some cases, the fact that they're out often it's because it's more than a maintenance issue now. It's becoming to the point where some of the escalators need to be fully replaced. And that's as we go into the next capital investment plan, which starts in earnest in next year, is how do we prioritize accessibility, those types of features that people rely on. Because I do understand how it is when they're out and you have a challenge with you going up or downstairs.
Oh, remember that was one of the T's greatest hits, the escalator going backwards and
hell of
people
a
going
video.
backwards down the stairs, and which wasn't funny. Thank goodness nobody was badly hurt. You know what? This is another person that's talking about parking overnight in the T lots. This one particular person talking about taking the Greenbush line when traveling to the airport, but he can't park overnight. Down in Situate or Cohasset, Uber, Lyft won't take you for such short rides. And he wrote to the MBTA about being able to park overnight. Was told it was because of snow plowing, but of course he wrote in June. There's no snow in June. So is that a regular thing, no overnight parking in T-lots?
I'll have to look into that, Margie, to be honest with you. The ability for people to use lots overnight, I think one of the challenges is that we've seen when you open up lots in that fashion, people leave vehicles longer than one night, and then that affects the people that need it on a regular basis. So there's a balancing act with regards to how the lots are made available. I don't know the specifics with regards to that one, though.
Yeah, I guess it'd be cheaper to be in an MBTA lot than park at Logan.
Hey, for the next caller from Somerville, we literally only have minutes, so please make it quickly. Is it Argent? Is that how you say your name?
Yes.
Argent, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm a former regional transportation planner, and I am stuck in hell between the Somerville Green Line and the Red Line, specifically Union Square. And instead of having faster service, we sit there, even sometimes between Union Square and Leechmere, for 10 minutes, and then maybe the next stop, the same thing. So, and then,
You gotta ask the question. I'm sorry, we're running out of time.
Sorry.
Okay, my question is, how can we make this transition going between the Green Line and the Red Line better? We need to have a bus.
We got it. Phil, please.
I'm not sure if she means, because Union goes to Leechmere, that's where I get on every day. So I'm trying to understand the transition to red, meaning the connection furthest in
Hey, Argent, you know what we're going to do? We're out of time. Stay on hold. Our colleagues will get your contact information and I assume somebody from your office, Phil,
Sure,
can reach
absolutely.
out,
We'll
and you'll get an
follow up.
answer.
Yeah.
Arjun, don't go away. We'll get it. Can I just say something to you before you go, because I was joking about coming back, which I hope you will. For years and years, we've been doing the show almost a quarter of a century.
Yep.
All we talk about is the GM of the T not even answering a question from a reporter I'm talking about, or answering in an email. It's really terrific, whether people like what you have to say or not.
It's a
that you're willing to
revolutionary
come- no, I'm
moment
serious,
here
and answer
in-
questions directly from
in the
riders.
history of the T.
You deserve a lot of praise
Yeah,
for that.
no, it's
You really
true.
do.